So part two, we're starting off immediately. So we're picking up right after Logan Day, with number 85, Brandon De Jong. At least I'm assuming it's De Jong, might be De Jong. Pretty sure it's De Jong. He's another camp invite, and really, I don't think this guy will be signed. He's left-handed, 6'5", 198. I believe he was drafted by the Hurricanes a couple years ago. In 51 games with the Portland Winterhawks of the WHL, he put up 7 goals, 27 assists for 27 points. The big thing is he had 72 penalty minutes and was only a +1. And then in the playoffs, 5 games, 1 goal, 1 point, 2 penalty minutes, and was a -3. So really, this is another guy that's kind of like, Bellamy in the last video, where you just kind of, you bring him in to motivate the other guys. Speaking of some other guys, we're gonna go slightly bigger than Brandon De Jong on this one. Number 73, right-handed defenseman, Vincent Desharnais. Now, if you've watched my channel, you know that I talked about Vinny a bit. So I'm not really going to go into it. If you want to know my thoughts on Desharnais, go watch my video. Really, it's what I said in there still applies to this. Other than you'd like to see some more offense. And then, to round out the defensemen, we pick up number 78 from Volgograd, Russia, 6'3", 192 pounds, of left-handed shot, Dmitry Samorukov. Now, Dmitry had himself some fun. So he played in the World Juniors, played in the OHL, played in the OHL playoffs, and then got to the Memorial Cup, all in the same year, and did pretty well for himself. So we're going to start with the World Juniors, where he played for the Russian under-20 team. 7 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, so for 4 points, 2 penalty minutes, and he was a +9. It's pretty good. And then, you want to talk about some real fun? Let's talk about his time in the OHL this past year. 59 regular season games, 10 goals, 35 assists for 45 points. Okay, it's not point per game, but at the same time, most defensemen aren't point per game. So I think I would take being almost point per game at this point. 20 penalty minutes, and he was just a +36. I think he knows how to get back if he needs to. And then you go to his playoff run with the Guelph Storm of the OHL. 24 games, 10 goals, 18 assists for 28 points. He's better than a point per game in the playoffs. They took 12 penalty minutes, so his penalty minute per game went up slightly from a third of a minute per game to half a minute. It's not that bad. And then he was a +18. So again, he still knows how to get back if he needs to. And then with Guelph in the Memorial Cup, he played 4 games, didn't score, but he got an assist. And he was 2 penalty minutes and a +1. I mean, really, that's a pretty good year for a defenseman. And especially when you consider that 7 of those playoff games came against Evan Bouchard, where We already talked about him and his playoff run. I'm kind of excited to see both of those guys, together. Because you can't tell me that Woodcroft isn't going to try that at the very least. So now, moving on from the defensemen, we have 13 more players to go, and they're all forwards. So a lot of these guys, it's going to be really short, because a lot of them played for Bakersfield last year, or I've made a video on already. So we're going to start with one of the guys who is going to be really short. Speaking of short, he's not necessarily that big, but he makes a big impact. 5'11", 190, left-handed shot. Number 49, left winger, Tyler Benson. So Benny had a really good year for the Condors. In 68 games, he was almost a point per game, with 15 goals and an astonishing 51 assists. He was almost an assist per game. And if Marody hadn't been called up out of necessity, I think he might have been an assist per game. He had 44 penalty minutes, which, okay, it's not great, but you'd like to see that come down a bit. And then he was a plus 21 in the regular season. 10 games in the playoffs, 1 goal, 6 assists for 7 points, 10 penalty minutes, and a plus 2. Still a pretty solid year for a rookie. The only thing with Benson that I didn't realize until I saw him play, he's kind of a jerk when he wants to be. Like, he's got a real mean streak in him that seems to work very well as I'm not saying that he will become this. I'm saying that there is a comparison in my head to Brad Marchand, because Marchand is very good at getting under your skin, but also putting up 100 points. I think I'd take that. I could deal with the garbage if he's putting up 100 points. Now we get to a guy who I don't have necessarily super high hopes, but I hope he does well. Number 42, Cameron Hebig. So Hebig started off the year in Bakersfield lighting the league on fire. Every goal seemed to go through him. Every playoff or every power play seemed to end with his stick. He was just tearing up the nets. And then the league adjusted to him. And then his point totals kind of, I don't want to say fell off the cliff, because he still put up almost 30 points. But at the pace he was on to start the year, you'd like to see that go up. So 64 games, 11 goals, 18 assists for 29 points. He had 30 penalty minutes, which I didn't realize until I went back and watched some of the games. Yeah, that's about right. And then he was a plus 6 in the regular season. And then the playoffs happened. He got into 3 games and was not effective at all. No goals, no assists, no points, no penalty minutes, and a -1. He was invisible for the 3 games he got in. I don't want to say, oh, he's a failure of a signing by Chiarelli. But, I mean, if he doesn't adjust, he might end up being that. And then we come to a guy who, while he was in the Oilers organization last year, I don't know anything about him. From Point Coquitlam, BC, 5'9", 170-pound center, right-handed shot, number 46, Steven Iacobellis. So Stevie had a pretty good year with mainly Wichita of the ECHL last year, even though he got into one game with San Antonio. But in that one game, the only thing that was notable was he's a -1. So we're going to talk about his ECHL numbers. 58 games, 23 goals, 42 assists for 65 points. Which, great, you're more than a point per game. But he also had 65 penalty minutes. So he's also more than a penalty minute per game. Now, granted, having watched the ECHL and knowing that that's a little bit more of a rough and tumble league than the AHL, it's still a concern, but it's not a don't touch this guy, concern like Brandon Manning is. The 65 points gives me more thought that he's a point scorer than a guy who goes out and is taking 2, 4, 5 penalties a night. The -4 is a bit concerning, but at the same time, it's also the ECHL. Scoring is kind of higher in that league. And then we come to another camp invite. 6'1", 182 pounds, left-handed shot, left winger, number 61, Liam Keller. So in 65 games with the Oil Kings, he got 8 goals and 16 assists for 24 points, 22 penalty minutes and a +16. I mean, sure, it's great. It's not great. It's okay. That would put him on about a 25, 30 point pace in the AHL. It's okay. And then in the playoffs, 16 games, 2 goals, no assists, 8 penalty minutes, and a -2. So really, I don't see him getting a contract out of this. Kind of like the other camp invites, it's motivate the forwards. And now we come to one of the Oilers' more recent draft picks out of Chambly, Quebec, center/right winger, 6'5", 197 pounds, number 62, Raphael Lavoie. Now, Raphael had a pretty good year with the Halifax Mooseheads, or is it Moosehead? I think it's Mooseheads. In 62 games, he put up 32 goals, 41 assists for 73 points. He had 31 penalty minutes and was a +36. Okay, that's exciting. And then in the QMJHL playoffs, 23 games, 20 goals, 12 assists for 32 points. Okay. 22 penalty minutes, and he was a -3. Then we get to the Memorial Cup. Played 4 games, had 2 goals and 1 assist for 3 points, 2 penalty minutes, and was even. I'm not going to talk about that much because he's been talked about a lot. That's really exciting, though, to see him possibly need to come through Bakersfield. But if he keeps putting up points like that, I don't think he will be.